大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. You know, as the Hong Kong situation escalates, I'm forced yet again to weigh in. I've been looking around for articles that are anti unity to get some perspective. What could be motivating these people to destroy their own city? We know it's not the demands that they've listed. That much is obvious. To me, it seems to be a group insanity born from frustrations over a lost identity. But honestly, I don't know enough about the roots of their angst. I can tell you this though, people are angry, and collectively they are a confused mess. That is a long way to describe a chaotic force. And today I'd like to point out that Hong Kongers are not Americans. I was reading this very colorful, well laid out article by Hong Kong Free Press the other day. It's called Thousands of Hong Kongers Urge U.S. to Pass Bill Defending Human Rights Amid More MTR Vandalism and Tear Gas. Wow, that's long. Hong Kong Free Press is not at all a government supporter. They've clearly chosen a side in this drama, and the side is separatism and bleak prospects. But that's why this article is so interesting to me. You see, they're trying to show these protesters in the best light possible. And still the protesters come off more like rioters than anything else. Let's take a look. So first it shows this picture with people holding American flags and says, tens of thousands of protesters were urging Washington to pass a bill to punish those it deems responsible for suppressing freedoms in the city. Do you see what my life is like, guys? Can you see the wheels turning in my skull? This article has only produced a single sentence, and I could already write a book to respond. Instead, I will try to be brief here. I'm just going to get through these thoughts. 1. Tens of thousands of protesters is a very small number compared to the supposed millions before. So does that mean the protesters are dying down? Seems like you should mention why there's so few people wanting this. 2. The bill they're referring to is one of the most extreme right-wing colonialist proposals ever seen in the history of the world. Just imagine the reality we're going to live in if the United States forms a legal agreement to punish those it deems responsible for suppressing freedoms in Hong Kong. I cannot overstate how dangerous this bill is. It could literally be the first step in a new era. Just out of curiosity, who is punishing America for suppressing freedoms of us Americans? Or who's punishing Britain for its government doing everything possible to go against the democratic votes of the people and Brexit? I would like to introduce a bill to you. Russia will now be able to punish those it deems responsible for suppressing freedoms of Americans, all right? Is that okay with you? How right-wing are you? Do you see any problem with that? No problem at all? Russia's going to punish Americans for what Russia thinks Americans are doing wrong to other Americans? No problem? Do you see how your ideology is blinding you as you push for a global dictatorship led by America? Okay, I have to keep going or I'm never going to stop. What's next? These people in masks are talking about America. They're asking Trump to potentially start a war with China. Then they've got a white girl holding an umbrella and what looks like an old Republic of China flag. Crazy because for some reason it reminds me of what protesters look like under British rule. Dead. And here the article sums up the bill by saying the U.S. will be able to freeze assets or deny visas to government officials who infringe on basic freedoms of Hong Kongers, which of course is only partly true. The real truth is in another video I made. Anyway, here's the fun part. The bill is so vague and wide open that it gives America punitive and coercive command over Hong Kong people the moment it's enacted. It's the United States beginning to colonize Hong Kong. It's the new Axis, the insane far right. And this article sums all that up as the U.S. can freeze assets and deny visas. Then we see more masked people. This guy is holding a sign that tries to appeal to the American Revolutionary War and how the government of France was allied with them or something. 3 problems with this guy. France was allied with them because the French hated the British. They weren't allied with them because they thought it was right. Also, no one in America remembers or cares that the French ever helped us with anything except for historians. The average American doesn't even know what you're talking about. And finally, you're comparing what you're doing with a revolution. This is a big mistake on your part. You aren't in a revolution. You're in a bunch of protests and riots, and there's a very big difference between protests and a revolution. Can you think of what those might be? No? A protest is a bunch of people with a complaint, usually holding signs and trying to get attention for their issues. A riot is a protest that spreads violence, like yours. A revolution is a war. If the United States annexes Hong Kong from China, there will quite possibly be war. Do you know how many millions of people might die? Do you care? Do you even know what you're doing? Is the mask you're wearing to prevent you from being executed as a war criminal when it's all finally over? Do you understand anything at all about history? This is so frustrating. Then it has right-wing protesters showing this Pepe the Frog alt-right symbol. Originally a non-partisan frog on the internet, the alt-left propped this symbol up to be a big fascist mascot, and now they're fumbling around trying to explain why the right-wing protesters in Hong Kong are embracing it. Hilarious. But more than that, it's further evidence that Hong Kong people don't really get America. Then it shows a purple-haired lady who says she wants rule of law and a bunch of protesters, and it's just kind of random photos. And speaking of rule of law, the cops clearly tell the protesters they cannot cross a police line. So the protesters who want rule of law were fine with that and they just went on the approved path. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's what would happen if they actually wanted rule of law. Instead, according to this anti-unity website, which will try to paint them in the best possible light, they vandalized a subway station, blocked the exits with piles of trash, smashed windows, and created a large fire. Then the protesters set multiple fires across the area, damaging the subway system and stopping traffic. That's weird. I thought you wanted rule of law. The Hong Kong police issued many warnings, but protesters refused to stop destroying the city. They are violent, they're breaking laws, and the one thing that we know they're against is the rule of law. Tear gas was used, and protesters claimed people died, but there was no proof. Kinda hard to hide dead people. And then, here we go again. This right-wing protester is wearing a ninja outfit and smashing through windows. No one is provoking Shinobi here. It's so obvious at this point that these are unprovoked acts of violence that even this anti-unity article has no choice but to show the crimes. And then we see a typical kind of tweet from the anti-unity crowd. Tear gas fired outside Sogo. Why? Why did these police fire tear gas? Could it have anything to do with the fires people were setting? How about the smashing of windows? How about the way the protesters are ignoring the rule of law? No, this is not a revolution. This is a wandering protest with riotous characteristics. One moment is peaceful, the next it's chaos. And all the while, the loudest, most violent criminals are the ones pretending to call for rule of law. In the US, your roaming bands of protests and violence would be shut down by the National Guard. If you kept going, you would get the real American treatment. Molotov cocktails, beating down police officers, you will be shot to death or arrested and imprisoned. And because you're Chinese, no one will call racism, no one will protest in your defense, and no one will save you. You'll be called privileged and no one will care. That's America. So please think about that before committing more violence. You want to ask for change? Go for it. But mass crimes are that much worse than individual crimes. And as the protesters commit more and more heinous acts, even the mainstream media is starting to finally mention it. You are not American. If you were, you would likely be dead or in prison by now. Remember that. Thanks, everybody. 谢谢。